awoke to an unfamiliar metallic bitterness in the air, and an inexplicable lightness at my nape that caused my stomach to constrict. Rising from my bed, I approached the mirror, and the reflection confirmed my worst fears. My once chestnut hair, long and meticulously cared for, had been severed in haphazard tufts. Initially, I assumed an intruder had violated my sanctuary. Yet as my gaze fell upon the craft scissors, identical to those my mother used for trimming old receipts, neatly placed on my dresser, the truth became undeniable. Beside them lay a brusque message. "You'll still look fine. Focus on your speech for Hannah's big day." The severed strands littered my pillow as though fragments of my identity had perished in my sleep. That wedding was meant to be my singular opportunity to command the attention of those who had long dismissed me, to don the navy silk gown I had purchased with my own earnings, and to speak with unerring confidence. Instead, I resembled someone who had forfeited a wager. Descending to the kitchen, I found my father immersed in his breakfast. "Ah, you're up," he remarked without lifting his eyes from the cereal bowl. "Less hair makes your face less distracting. After all, the focus should not be on you." My mother, stirring her coffee, added, "It's Hannah's wedding. Let her shine." They comported themselves as though I were an affront to the very brightness of the day, as though my presence in a well-chosen dress imperiled the entire affair. Allow me to clarify. I was never the daughter they celebrated. I was the one they constrained. Hannah received the couture gowns and violin lessons. I inherited cast-off garments and lectures on gratitude. She enjoyed a commencement sojourn in Paris. I worked weekends to fund my college education, just as I was instructed. By 19, I had moved into my own apartment, balanced 2 jobs, and still RSVP'd affirmatively to the wedding, hopeful that perhaps, just perhaps, it would be a rare moment of familial harmony. Instead, they drugged me with NyQuil in a cup of ostensibly soothing tea and mutilated my hair while I slept. My own parents. When I relayed the horror to my roommate, Becca, she arrived in a flurry of alarm. At the sight of me, she inhaled sharply. "They did this deliberately." I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. Becca said nothing for a beat, then produced her phone. "We're not attending the wedding like this," she declared. "We're going to do something far more significant." At first, I sought only distance, not vengeance. Yet when Becca helped me review an old voice memo, a recording I had made for my therapist to capture my mother's barbed comments and my father's insinuations that my appearance would overshadow the occasion, the situation crystallized into something far more insidious, a pattern of deliberate undermining. And then Becca whispered, "There is a way to compel them to listen." That night, I resolved to attend the wedding, but on my own terms. I would reject the dress they had derided and discard the carefully scripted toast they expected me to recite. I would shred their narrative, and that, I decided, would only be the beginning. I did not sleep that night, at least not in any meaningful way. Becca, ever steady, helped transform the uneven remnants of my hair into a sleek, purposeful bob. "You look like someone about to expose an entire family dynasty," she murmured, brushing the final strand into place. By morning I had made my decision. I arrived at the wedding venue ahead of the crowd, a sweeping vineyard estate, naturally curated for its photogenic appeal. Hannah's dream day was funded by my parents' life savings, propped up by my mother's performative smiles and my father's unwavering adoration for his real daughter. I had always been cast as a background character. But not today. I had rehearsed the speech they expected of me, something hollow and saccharine about sisterhood and forever bonds. Instead, I walked up to the microphone during the rehearsal brunch, just as the atmosphere brimmed with smug warmth and champagne smiles. "Good morning, everyone," I began. "I know I've never been the favorite daughter. That's never been a secret. But today, I'd like to speak about something different." The mood shifted instantly. My mother's carefully arranged smile began to falter. "I want to talk about what exists beyond the curated family portraits, about what happens when love becomes control, about how people will literally cut you down to keep you from shining, when they drug you with tea so you sleep through the sabotage, When your very presence is treated like a threat to the child they actually cherish. There were audible gasps. One uncle dropped his fork. My father abruptly rose to his feet. "That's enough," he barked. But I didn't yield. "You don't get to rewrite my story anymore. You don't get to minimize me, hide me, or act like this never happened." I held up my phone and pressed play. My mother's voice rang out, crisp and cruel. "She thinks she'll look better than Hannah. We'll fix that." Then my father's amused reply. "We'll cut it while she sleeps. Girls like her need reminders." The room fell into a stunned, suffocating silence. Guests froze. Forks paused midair. Faces turned toward one another in disbelief and discomfort. I closed with the only words that felt right. "You taught me shame. Now I'm teaching you consequences." Security escorted me out, not because I was disruptive, but because my parents had begun shouting. My sister wept, not in empathy but in indignation. "This will ruin my photos," she sobbed. But it wasn't the end. Within 24 hours, the video clip, posted by Becca with the caption, "This is what happens when you weaponize family," had gone viral. It exploded across platforms. Millions of views. Celebrities reshared it. TikTokers turned my words into a movement. Strangers flooded my inbox with messages like, "Thank you for saying what I never could." And then came the email, from an editor at a national wedding magazine. "Your story isn't just courageous, it's necessary. How would you feel about being featured in an article called, 'The Uninvited Sister Who Stole the Show?'" Said yes. The photo shoot became everything my parents had tried to strip from me. Elegant, commanding, unapologetically mine. They styled my new haircut, did my makeup, and dressed me in gowns that glittered louder than the shame I had carried for years. That moment marked the beginning of the second chapter of my life. 3 months passed. My family never reached out. Not to apologize, not to explain. But they didn't need to. The world had already taken notice. My story had become a cultural moment. Talk shows debated it. Writers dissected every word. From beauty bias and sister rivalry to the emotional abuse masked as tradition. I had become a symbol for every daughter who had been silenced, dimmed, or dismissed in favor of a shinier sibling. But fame was never the goal. It was never about the spotlight. It was about finally stepping out of the shadows and refusing to go back. What I wanted, more than revenge, more than apology, was freedom. And I wanted to ensure that no other girl would ever be silenced the way I was. It began with an email from Cynthia Ray, the CEO of a luxury fashion brand known for its bold, unapologetic campaigns and its mission to restore reputations through radical truth. Her daughter had endured something hauntingly similar. Cynthia wasn't just offering sympathy. She offered me a role, not merely as a model, but as the creative director for a new campaign titled, "You Can't Cut Power." Photo shoots followed. Press interviews. TEDx invitations. I turned my pain into purpose, and found my voice amplified, not silenced. Back home, the fallout was swift and unsurprising. Their pristine suburban neighborhood turned cold. The same neighbors who had once clapped for Hannah at church now avoided her at the grocery store. Even the priest who had officiated the wedding addressed his congregation, stating that it was not me who needed forgiveness, but the bride. 6 weeks after the ceremony, Hannah's husband, Greg, quietly left. He had discovered something disturbing, a shoebox filled with printed screenshots of anonymous Instagram comments. All cruel. All about me. All written by his wife. She hadn't just watched the harm unfold. She had orchestrated it. She wasn't just complicit. She was obsessed. And now alone. I'd love to say that realization brought me peace. But the truth is, by then I simply didn't care. I was too busy building something they could never stain. Then Cynthia made another offer, one that felt poetic in its symmetry. "We're opening our first creative studio in your hometown. Would you like to run it?" I laughed, caught off guard. "You're serious?" She smiled. "Imagine it, the same town, but now you're the one people want to impress." And so I said yes. We launched a modern, sun-drenched creative space right in the heart of the city, just blocks from the recital hall where my parents once paraded Hannah in pearls. Only now, the windows bore a new message. Power cannot be cut. At our grand opening, we hosted an open house. Local press attended. Activists, survivors, even a handful of former classmates, the ones who once mocked my quietness, showed up asking about internships. But the moment that truly stood out, my parents walked in. Uninvited, unannounced. My mother wore oversized sunglasses. My father looked older, weathered by guilt, by exposure, or perhaps simply by the loss of control. They didn't seem to recognize the woman standing at the podium. Composed, commanding, impossible to dismiss. They tried to pretend nothing had happened. "We're proud of you," my mother said softly. I offered a polite smile. "That's interesting. You haven't said that since I had braces." My father chuckled awkwardly. "We all make mistakes. Families heal, right?" I walked to the front desk with deliberate grace. "Would you like to leave a comment card?" Yes. "We value honest feedback here." They blinked. I continued, gently but firmly. "If not, I have a room full of people I genuinely respect who are waiting to hear me speak." As I turned away, I caught a final glimpse of them, standing awkwardly in a space they once believed I could never belong to. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to shame them. The building, the work, people. That was the loudest statement of all. But just as they reached the glass exit, I turned back. "Oh, and one more thing," I said. "Next time you try to cut one daughter down to lift another, remember this. Scissors dull. But some girls sharpen." They didn't return. And I didn't need them to. Because at last I understood. They never defined my beauty. They never held my power. And they never, ever, had the right to define my worth. Not with scissors. Not with silence. Not ever again. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments. Where are you watching from?